This is FightFans Radio.
Yes, welcome to another edition of BJJ Addict Radio. And man, 7 days, a lot of shit happens, man. So in 7 days, there's been a lot of stuff going on. I don't even know if I should cover it as being do you consider us media?
I do. We are.
All right. So someone said, like, as a media person, you kind of have the responsibility to cover what's going on, regardless if you want to cover it or not. What do you believe in that?
I think so, but I mean, yeah, like we also gotta what do you call it? What's the word? We gotta be unbiased with our opinions. I think
that's true.
Because I mean, if we say something like, "Oh, I like this person," and then the other person is gonna be like, "Ah, okay, I like that person too."
That's right. You do got to be aware, especially if you do have people that respect your opinion.
Yeah. So that's the only, I think, responsibility that we have is to not be biased.
I like how we started the show, jumped in. It's almost like we've been having this conversation already for hours, and people should know what we're talking about. But none of us know what we're talking about right now. No, but, I wrote a tweet on Twitter, and I said, I hope this black eye on the sport gets, goes away. And then people are like, what black eye are you referring to?
Yeah.
And I was kind of like, wow, is there not a black eye on the sport right now?
Yeah.
So it was a big mix up. And then people were like, yeah, man, they should save wrestling. And I was like, that's not the black eye.
Yeah, I mean,
so I didn't cover it. I didn't cover anyone leaving, or anything. I didn't even bring up this topic. I was just wondering, honestly, putting it out there. I want to know if people even care to hear about it, or if people are interested. Let us know on Facebook or on our Twitter, or just hit us up on any of our social medias. Because, I'm the type of person, I don't like to go out on a whim, regardless. Like, I don't want to go out there and put anything out ever if I don't have 1,000% of facts.
Yeah.
So I just want to know, people out there, if they care about us ever covering everything. Do you guys care about us covering what goes on outside of the sport also? That's what I'm getting at, really. Or do they care about us just caring about stuff that happens on the mats, tournaments, and continuing our show like we do? What's your thoughts, though, personally?
Honestly, I think, people are already... They see it all on Facebook and everyone's commenting. Everybody, it's people know about it, and I don't really hear much of any media covering the topic. But
like if you think about it, there's been a lot of forums. The UG, everyone knows the UG. If you're in MMA on mixedmartialarts.com, they have some things going up lately. Bloody Elbow has been covering the story since day one. They've been really on it, and supposedly going to publish a story sometime tonight about what's going on. So, they've been covering a lot. Some other MMA sites have been jumping on it. But, as far as us as a BJJ community, there's not much covering it. And I feel like, opposed to a couple other big names out there, I feel like we have some sort of, people look for us to be up to date on some news and give it to them, but I kind of like haven't done it at all, because I don't know if it's my place.
Yeah.
As a person, I don't think it's my place to say anything, but like, we got an entity, I find, with
discussion.
Yeah, with BJJ Addict Radio, we got talks going on. I think it's good to open up discussions. And
honestly, all I can say about this whole thing is that, treat others how you would like to be treated, and karma, So, I mean, if you keep positivity around whatever it is that you're doing, I think positive things will come as opposed to being negative.
Yeah.
And
But like, yeah, that's what I mean. But I want people's feedback on this for sure. If something's going on off the mats, say, I just don't want to turn into like a TMZ. But let's say our favorite BJJ guy, whoever it is, right? Let's say he got busted for drugs.
Yeah.
Okay? He was a drug dealer on the side. Is this something that we go around and we talk about too, or do we just keep it to what we always have been? Because our sport doesn't seem to have that many scandals or people living lifestyles other than the jiu-jitsu lifestyle.
Well, honestly, I think unless you're chasing money,
yeah,
because money, I think, ultimately shows a true side of a person and their responsibilities. We're not the NBA. We're not. Our sport doesn't have millions and millions to spend on athletes and whatnot.
Yeah.
But I think that's what keeps the humility and the being humble. Because we don't make all that much money.
Well put. I like that.
So I think that's why we don't have a lot of scandalous things going on because we don't have the money to spend on stupid shit.
Yeah, absolutely. One person made a great point. Also, they said, you know what? Whether it's right or wrong, they said, this type of stuff happens in numerous sports, and it's a reflection on the person. It has nothing to do with us as a sport. But I kind of feel like it does because we're such a tight knit community and we're not a large population of people doing this. I feel like we all have a responsibility. Like, I don't want to say that I do BJJ and then people kind of give you that snooty look, like, kind of like we're in a dirty sport or a bad sport or we're doing something wrong. Like,
honestly,
I'm proud to say that I do Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu.
Honestly, our sport, whether or not you want to be, you consider yourself a fighter or martial artist or whatever, we're supposed to be martial artists. We're supposed to be good people, and I think that's what makes a lot of people positive in terms of doing, bad stuff. Would you rather, as a martial artist, I wouldn't, because we go through so much sweat in the mats that you don't want to like jump somebody.
Yeah.
You don't see people who like high level jiu-jitsu guys get into street fights and whatnot. So I think that being in the martial arts is supposed to make you become a good person or help you in the right path. So I think that's why you don't see a lot of things like this. But again, people have different motives.
Yeah, let's just kind of like off segue before we get to our first guest here, because I gotta say it. I mean, if Atos wasn't a strong enough team already, if Keenan Cornelius and JT Torres do, I know they're training there, if they do end up staying and representing them, where do you think their level of jiu-jitsu would go?
In a better direction. I mean,
do you like them being at Atos?
Yeah, I think with Galvao, like there's so many people that go to Atos, like Kira Gracie and what's his name there? Help me out here.
Mike Fowler.
Yeah,
he's been there for a while now.
And his wife.
Yeah.
They've all been there.
And the Mendes and all them all trained together.
Yeah. So I mean, it's going to be definitely a big powerhouse for the teams in jiu-jitsu. So I don't know, man. It's going to be a big year. Especially, I haven't seen much from JT Torres. Imagine
after training with Galvao or a couple other guys. I figured Ed Ramos and they got a stacked team. So you know what? We don't have this enough in the sport because they have these words like traitor or creton or whatever, cretin, these words. But like as a sport of BJJ, as a fan and watching the highest level guys, sometimes it's cool to see them have a different patch on and train because it's kind of like a hockey team, like a trade goes on type of thing. You get excited in basketball or football or hockey. You can't do that in BJJ. So them joining another team kind of like makes you think about what possibilities it would help the purples coming up under the Autos and then their own game because they're still young kids, right?
Yeah.
And they're used to one style of training. And trust me, I bet you Galvao trains a lot different.
and he's gonna, man, it's good for Goval too. So
Yeah, to have the new style like put it on him.
yeah.
So I'm pumped to see their next couple performances in the next couple months and see if they could continue their winning ways or, maybe they had a better formula before training. So it's all going to unfold in front of us in the upcoming months.
And I think it'll make things fresh for the Autos team too, because I think Keenan Cornelius is like the new era of jiu-jitsu. And I mean, I think Galval, he's been, I think, grappling the same kind of thing, like not bearing and stuff like that. Those are new school. So I think with Keenan going there, it's gonna propel Galval too.
I agree.
And Galval is one of my favorite guys to watch. So, oh man,
but I think it'll make maybe it won't. I don't know, but that's what I'm saying. I'd love to see if it'll tighten up his game or make it stronger. Because I've seen Keenan. He does have. He could do jiu-jitsu fine any way he likes. Yeah. It's just I guess he probably enjoys the way he does it right now. But like I've seen his top game, man. It's solid. So it'd be cool. And I believe the Mile brothers just went out there. They're out at Mendes Brothers training, and they represented them at the San Fran Open. And
yeah.
And they were trying like Mendes style passing. They didn't even bother going for beer and bowls. They were trying to pass. Like that's rare.
Yeah.
So, if they're still out there, man, right now, them, Keenan, JT, and the rest of the All Stars, like that's some huge shit going on.
Like I don't know. I'm a Drysdale team affiliate.
Correct.
But I mean, alliances. I mean, I've told you this so many times. I want to represent Alliance one day, especially like Marcelo's. But it's going to be tough. I mean, for the Alliance team, if they're going to go against. I think they've almost got every weight category.
Jared's opinion is on his own. It does not represent Real DWC or FightFans Radio or BJJ Addict or BJJ Addict Radio.
Yeah, exactly. That's a disclaimer right there.
They'll call me up. Be like, what the fuck?
You're kicked off the team.
That would just prove a point on how ridiculous jiu-jitsu is with team alliances. I would actually want that to happen live on the air. I'd love to get kicked off the team just so we could just prove a point to everyone how like it's a little overdone these days. I'm all for no politics. I'm all for ELE. Everyone love everyone, So let's get on. We'll call our first guest, Mr. Shane Rice, a fellow Canadian, but I believe he's been in America so long. We'll see if he's still repping the CA
to the Canada.
You know what our acronym really is? It's CND. Yeah, it's not like CAN. It's not CAN. It's CND. It's weird. Hello, may we speak with Shane?
This is Shane.
Shane, you're live on BJJ Addict Radio. Thank you very much.
Thank you. It's a pleasure.
It's all ours. So just so you know, I'm David, and we also got Jer.
What's going on?
Okay.
So if you think there's two different voices, you are correct. You're not going crazy or anything. So at the moment, you're in Cali, I believe.
In Cali?
Yeah.
No. I'm in Canada.
Okay. So sorry about that. For some reason, I thought you were
I've been all over the place the last few years, so it's probably pretty hard to track me down.
That makes sense. So let's start fresh because you've been in this world a long time for the jiu-jitsu community. Can you tell us how it all started for you?
Wow. Okay, well, I'm originally from the east coast of Canada. I'm originally from a place called Halifax, Nova Scotia.
Oh, Lord, Thunder and Jesus.
Yeah, way out there, bro, way out there. It started like a lot of people back in the day. You saw the first UFC with Hoist there in the UFC, and at the time that I saw that, I didn't even really understand what it was, But that was my first exposure to jiu-jitsu. And then I met a few random people. I met this one person who had some videos, and he kind of showed me some moves. And
now we're talking VHS.
Was it? Yeah, it would have been VHS. It would have been actual VHS movies. That's how long ago it was. So I messed around with him a little bit, but I wasn't really that serious about it. And then there's a few guys up here that started training with Henzo Gracie, and they had his VHS movies. And I started messing around with those guys, and in a short time, I had traveled to Toronto, Ontario, and Rickson was up there doing a seminar. And that was my first exposure to Rickson, and I met him, and I was just completely blown away by him and the way he taught. And 6 months later, or 6 months to maybe a year later, I was in California.
That's amazing. That's really jumping right into it.
Yeah, when I first started training, it was kind of like just get into it for something else to do. I mean, I trained my whole life. I started in amateur boxing when I was in my early teens, 12, 13, 14. I did some wrestling in junior high and high school. So I was always kind of into martial arts and boxing and things like that. And, man, I found jiu-jitsu, and I remember maybe the month that I really started to train serious, it was just a couple times a week to stay in shape and to do something different. And then it was every single day.
What made you hooked into jiu-jitsu as opposed to, not sticking to boxing or wrestling?
I just, watching like Royce and Rickson and things like that, it just was really amazing to me to see these guys go in. And at that time, they were fighting guys with no weight limits and no time limits and no rules and things like that. And to just go in and see them have such complete control and dominance over guys that were so much bigger and so much stronger, and they made it look so easy. It wasn't even, the fights almost weren't even fair. That really appealed to me, one, because I'm a smaller guy. And I started competing right away, and I got really hooked on the competition aspect of it too.
They say that one tournament could increase you by 4 months or something. I personally think that's a little high, but what's your take on how far it would advance you if you do start competing?
As an instructor, I don't push my students to compete. The ones that show a little bit of interest, I push them to at least try it. I do believe that competition can help you progress faster, and maybe be more effective on the mats in the gym. But I don't know, I can't say how much more effective or how much faster it's going to make you. But I think it's not the competing that does it. It's the extra training you do and the harder you train in preparation for the competition that is what excels you. Usually people who compete, they train more, they train harder. And then anytime you put yourself in an environment where you're under an immense amount of pressure, it increases your confidence, your awareness, all those things. So, all the time as my students, I tell them the experience. I'm like, you're going to go to a competition, you're going to do a few competitions, and then you're going to come back, and rolling in the gym is going to seem easy, because I even remember myself from way back in the day. Sometimes when you roll in the gym, you have a few rivalries in the gym. You get the same nerves as you get in a competition. Your heart races a little bit. You're kind of nervous whether you're going to get tapped out or you're going to tap him out. So when you do a lot of competition, you just get very accustomed to dealing with those really high pressure situations.
That's well put. I never thought about it that way, but it does make a lot of sense about the extra training and times on the mat. When you first went out to Cali, which gym were you training at that time?
In California?
Correct, yes.
I went directly to Rickson. So I pretty much, like I said, I started here in Halifax with some guys, some local guys that, was more like, you have to remember that at this time it was, I don't even remember. I want to say 1996 or 7, probably. There wasn't, like, if you were a blue belt in Canada, that was as good as a black belt. So we had a handful of guys. We're all basically teaching each other and training ourselves from videotapes and things like this. And I did that for probably a year to a year and a half. And then right after the seminar with Rickson, I continued for the next 6 months. He was doing a bunch of seminars on the East Coast of the U.S., and I kept going down to his seminars. And at the last one, he gave me my blue belt, and a month later, I was in California at his school.
That's phenomenal. And at this time, I mean, he's still huge today, but in those early 90s, he's larger than life, traveling around Japan and beating the crap out of everyone. How often is he at the dojo, and how much time did you have hands-on with Rickson himself during this time?
You know, I'm very, very thankful and very lucky, fortunate that I got in when I did. When I first went to California, probably I would say the first 4 or 5 years, he was quite active at the gym. He had 3 days a week he was usually in, you know, and then depending on what his schedule was, if he was in Japan or touring or doing whatever, he would maybe be there less, and then sometimes he would be there more. So in the beginning, he was there a lot. I started to teach at the gym as a purple belt. I would fill in as a blue belt in some of the white belt classes once in a while, but as a purple belt, I started to teach on a very, very regular basis. So I got a lot of special attention because I was teaching for him and stuff like that. I mean, I got to spend quite a bit of time with Rickson, and I'm very thankful for that. He had a big impact on my life, and I owe what I have now today and all my jiu-jitsu to him. So, yeah.
What does it mean to you, for you to be the first black belt? I think Canadian, is it, under Rickson Gracie?
I don't think about it as much as maybe I should, but obviously I'm very, very proud of that. I think anyone who gets a black belt from Rickson or someone high up like that, like the original Gracie family, is very proud. Those guys are the forefathers of our art, and man, to be the first one in Canada, I'm very proud of that. You know, I love Canada. I love my country. I'm proud to be from Canada. And I just do my best to represent Canada, jiu-jitsu, and Rickson very, very, very well, you know.
I got a more serious question. How hard was it living without Tim Hortons?
I'll tell you, bro. I went down to California. When I first went down and I tried Starbucks, I hated it. And then I was the Starbucks poster child. And now and I said I would never drink Tim Hortons again. And now I'm back in Canada and all I drink is Tim Hortons.
It's the best season of the year. Roll up the rim right now. You got to do it.
Oh, man. I won 3 roll up the rims in a row this week. Awesome.
I swear to God, they changed it this year because I've never won as much as this year than any other time in my life.
I went 2 weeks. I didn't win anything, and then I got 3 in a row. So I'm happy.
It feels good, eh?
Yeah.
Were they all donuts or coffee?
Coffees, bro.
That's like hitting the jackpot.
Yeah.
So I had a question because I'm thinking early 90s, you know, jiu-jitsu was still very, you know, us against them in certain aspects. Were you well accepted being an instructor as a purple belt and your name's Shane Rice, no Gracie, or you're not Brazilian, you're not even American for that matter? Like, did any of these play factors in during this time?
You know, I would say the only one was the non-Brazilian thing. You have to remember at this time in jiu-jitsu, like I said, for anyone that wasn't Brazilian to have even a purple belt was a big deal. But you know, we had a tight crew at Rickson's. I feel that the guys that trained in my classes and trained with me had a lot of respect for me. I trained very, very hard. I trained all the time. I competed all the time. You know, I did well in competition. I think that helped too. I was accepted very well. I think most people down in California didn't even know that I was from Canada. So, I mean, I have a lot of friends. I mean, I would have to say, you know, I have a lot of great friends all over the world. That's the one beautiful thing about jiu-jitsu is, man, you meet so many people, and I have friends all over the world. But I would have to say a large majority of the closest friends I have are in California. So it's, you know, jiu-jitsu, that's what jiu-jitsu does. It's like a big family, you know, and Kim and Hickson were very, very good to me and always helped me out. And, yeah, it was such an amazing experience. And I think that the people towards the end of me being in California, you know, after I was a black belt, I was in California for probably another 3-4 years. You know, I was one of the main instructors at the academy. And this is at a time, you know, after my black belt, Hickson wasn't there that much. He actually moved back to Brazil the last couple of years I was in California. So it was just me and Crone teaching at the gym. And, you know, the guys that were coming to Hickson Gracie Academy were training with me and him. So my classes were always full, and I think that everyone enjoyed it.
Nice. When Crone was there, and you got to train alongside him, did you know then? Because I always wonder about that. Like, do people really know that this person's going to turn out to be someone special in the sport and such a beast on the mats? Like, did you know that while you were training side by side?
Well, I know Crone for a long time, ever since he was a real little kid.
Yeah.
Man, when he was little, he was in my kid's class. And
wow.
He was annoying as hell. So he was a brat, and I didn't think anything at that time. He just kind of came into the class and drove me out of my mind. But you could really, really see it. Probably, you know, I would say when he, you know, was maybe 14, you know, and he started to develop a little bit, some athletic ability and things like that. You have to remember, you know, a kid, doesn't matter what family they're from, at, you know, 10, 11, 12 years old, they're not thinking about taking anything serious, and they're still very little. But when he got around 14, maybe 15, and started to really train serious, started to develop a little bit physically, you could see it, you know. By the time he was 16, he was just a monster, you know. And he would only been, I don't know, a purple belt by then, but he was just throwing big, full-grown man around that weigh him by 100 pounds like nothing. Man, he's really, really turned out to be a monster. And I'm very happy for him, and it was a pleasure to get to watch him come up. And, you know, and I'm still very close with Crone. And, man, he's going to take over the sport of jiu-jitsu.
Are there any kind of good memories that you're willing to share with us and the listeners?
Anything in particular?
Anything like one of your greatest moments in the sport?
One of my greatest moments in the sport. I don't know. Maybe probably one of my biggest moments that I grew in the sport would have been right after I had a knee surgery, and I actually had to have 2 knee surgeries. And this would have been, I don't know, 2007 or 2008 or something like that. And it was really, really hard for me. I had a bad luck with one surgery, so I had to go right in and have another surgery. I was extremely, extremely stressed out, and because teaching was my livelihood, it was hard for me to teach. I was hardly making any money, and I saw competition just vanish from my eyes. So I went through a long period, maybe 6 months, where I really struggled. And then my knee started to feel better, and I wanted to compete again. And I jumped into a competition. I think it was the Worlds, the No-Gi Worlds or something like this. And I didn't win. I took 3rd place, but I won a couple matches. But the difference is that I had gone into that competition with just the desire to actually be at the competition, just to go there, just to compete. I wasn't going with the expectation to win. I wasn't putting tons of pressure on myself. I was in horrible shape. I still had the knee brace on my knee. But I went in. I had a couple great matches. I felt amazing. I took a bronze medal. And it was at that time that I really started to understand how to approach competition and what competition was about, and the mental aspect of competition. And since that point, I found competition after that to be very, very easy. So that was a good high moment for me in my career, my growth as jiu-jitsu.
Nice. I just realized, like you said, the world no-gis, that you took it, and I remember reading about you before, and that you've placed also before in no-gis. I just realized back in the day, no one even really did no-gi or believed in it that much. So when did your no-gi, when did you start to play around with that and take the kimono off?
I mean, I had always trained no-gi. I don't really think I specifically trained no-gi. It's just, it just comes from the time that I started jiu-jitsu. When I started jiu-jitsu, everyone was doing jiu-jitsu more for MMA or real fighting. When I started jiu-jitsu, tournament jiu-jitsu hadn't had the explosion it had at this point. It wasn't that big yet. There was a couple big tournaments in Brazil, and that's all that anyone really knew about it. Like I said, most of the people that I started jiu-jitsu from, we learned jiu-jitsu from watching the UFC and things like this. So most of us had the aspiration to fight professional or to train for that reason. So at Hickson's Academy, we would take the gi off all the time. We'd do slap fighting. We'd do stuff like that. I remember when Hoxton was around, me and him would do a lot of sparring, just bare hand in the gym after class. It was much different back then. It was a little bit more about fighting and street fighting and things like that. It was like the self-defense aspect of jiu-jitsu was still very strong back then, and the real fight was still very strong back then. We did jiu-jitsu competition because you went to represent the team. It wasn't necessarily back then about being the world champion or anything like that.
Nice. You spoke on mixed martial arts. I see that you have done some fights. You ended on a super high note with 3 straight subs. And what made you step away from competing after that time?
The 2 knee surgeries.
Yeah.
So it was my last fight there. It was in, I think it was in Santa Monica. I had been training. I fought in segments. I did some fights up here in Canada. In the beginning of my MMA career, I didn't make the smartest decisions. And at that time, there was also not very many people around my weight. So I would either get stuck fighting guys heavier than me, or just making bad choices on when I should take fights and things like that. So I had some bad fights and some good fights, and then I stepped away. And then in California, I started to fight again, and I did it the right way this time. I did 3 fights back to back, won all 3 fights, I think, in the first round. And then after the last one there, maybe 1 month after that last fight, I was doing the warm-up at the academy, and boom, my knee blew. So that kind of sidetracked me. And then, like I said, after my knee surgeries, I had been out for so long, I wanted to start back with just jiu-jitsu competition to ease back into it. And I had a lot of luck in the jiu-jitsu competition. I fell back in love with it again, and I just continued to do that. So I've considered jumping back in the ring. Hard to say if I will or not, but yeah, I had a few fights.
Looking back in the past till now, what do you think is better, to train smart or train aggressive, going for the submissions, or kind of training like how you would fight in a tournament?
I always think definitely training, after being in the game for so long and having so many injuries and looking back at where I got those injuries and how I got those injuries and things like that, training smart is definitely the best because, I remember a long time ago, I was always training with the thought that I'm running out of time kind of thing. But you wouldn't believe how long of a career you can have in jiu-jitsu, and how long of a career you can have as a competitor if you take care of yourself and you train the right way. And at the end of the day, it always comes down to technique. So I definitely think training smart is better. And also too, it depends on the style of jiu-jitsu you play. If you go in there and you believe in your technique and you put it on the line like that, if the submission's there, it's going to happen. I think being overly aggressive may give you some success sometimes, but I think can also hurt you other times.
That's true. Before we let you go, because we are running out of time, I just want to know, perhaps if you could share a moment when maybe you were down on yourself or going through a rough spot in the sport, which happens. This is a damn roller coaster being in BJJ. Something Rickson said to you, maybe you didn't get or understand as full until you got older and were teaching yourself, and you realized you were saying these same words to somebody to either get them refocused or boost their confidence, or is there any specific moment you remember some words that really had an impact on you?
Well, there was one time, I don't know if it was at the time I was being, I think, taught a lesson. It wasn't, but I was kind of, it was a lesson I need to learn, and now I share it with my students when they're feeling down about losing. So I was at I think it was Pan Am's. I was a brown belt. I remember that. I don't remember what year it was. It was a long time ago. And the interesting thing about this tournament was 1 week before the Pan Am's, I was a purple belt, and I was really excited to go to the Pan Am's, and I felt that I was going to dominate as a purple belt. So Rickson gives me my brown belt the week before. So I'm all stressed out. I go to the Pan Am's and I win it. I had 3 fights. The first 2 fights I did very well. The third fight was extremely close. It was me and a guy from Japan, and there was no points, no advantages. It came down, or no, there was no points. We each had an advantage, and it came down to a ref's decision. So I have Rickson sitting in my corner, the ref standing there at the time. This is in California. Who do you think he's going to give it to? So with Rickson sitting there staring at him, the ref gives it to me. I mean, it could have went either way, but he gave it to me. So I was quite happy. I had won the Pan Am's a week being a brown belt. It was a big deal at that time.
Yeah, for sure.
A really big deal to me. So I didn't go crazy, but I was very happy, and I kind of, celebrated a little bit. And I looked over at Rickson, and I, kind of pointed to him and thanked him, and he kind of, I had all the team there freaking out, going crazy, and he just kind of got up and walked away. And I was like, wow, that was, he didn't even congratulate me, whatever, da-da-da-da. So later on, I get my medal, and I go find Rickson. I'm like, hey, Hicks, I'm like, let's get a picture, I'm like, you seemed upset, after I won. He's like, and he looked at me, and he said to me, he said, you won, but you didn't beat him. And I didn't understand that at that time. And then it wasn't until years later that I did another competition, and I lost in the same fashion. There was no points, and the ref had to give it to someone. He gave it to the other guy, and I was very upset. And he looked at me, and he said, you lost, but he didn't beat you. What that means is that when it comes to competition, in his eyes, he only believes the only way you lose is if you get submitted. If the clock runs out or the guy beats you on points, well, that's a game. That's not jiu-jitsu. So you lost the game, but he didn't beat you. And that's what I tell my students. I share that story with them when they go to competition and things like this. Don't get upset if you go to a competition, you lose a couple points, you lose by advantage. The guy didn't beat you. So I think that's important to remember, because the name of the game is submission. And I think today in sport jiu-jitsu, you see a lot of lot of guys playing the points and playing things like that. And I mean, that's a part of the game too. But at the end of the day, it's all about making the guy tap.
I actually, that was a great story, man. That was awesome.
True story. Very true.
I like it. I can relate to that. I'm about 1 in 58 in tournaments. And and it's all on points, you know, so I don't feel like I ever lost.
Yeah. Well, you know, jiu-jitsu, the original jiu-jitsu, the way his dad developed it, it was not about winning. It was about surviving, you know, and they still feel that to the core. You know, it's about surviving the fight. It's not about beating the guy. If the opportunity presents itself that you can take him out, you take him out. But the number one rule is to survive first.
I like that. Let's end on that note, to survive. That's well put, man. Shane, I'd like to thank you for coming on. It's been a pleasure speaking with you. It's been awesome. So thank you very much.
Thanks, guys. I really appreciate you guys having me on. Thank you so much.
Before we let you go, actually, if you want to just plug anything, if you got, I don't know, anything you got, sponsors, websites, something going on you want to announce, just now's your time.
Just my gym, victoryjujitsu.com. Check it out. And Hickson Gracie Jiu-Jitsu. That's all I got to plug, bro.
Nice. All right. Thank you very much.
Thanks, guys. Ciao.
Take care. Man, that was a great story, though.
Very thick Canadian accent.
Yeah, man. It's nice to talk to a fellow Canadian for once.
I feel like I know.
I don't know what's bigger, him being the first Canadian to get it from Hickson, or the first Canadian black belt on our show.
I know.
That's way bigger. All right, let's keep this moving. We got another man to call. Let's hit him up, and let's keep this great show going. My energy's high right now. You?
Oh man, the extra large
coffee. Cough. Can we actually go 2 for 2 for once?
I hope so.
Hello.
Hello, may I speak to Mr. Dion Wats, please?
That's me.
You are live on BJJ Addict Radio.
Awesome.
And I thought you deserve a over-the-top entrance.
Yeah.
So how are we tonight?
I'm doing good. I was listening to the show. It was good so far.
Yeah,
That's a hard act to follow,
it too.
man. He knew his stuff.
Yeah, so I honestly, I don't know if I believe in like weird coincidence, or I don't know what you call it, but I'm looking at your Wats choke on YouTube. I'm looking at it. I'm thinking, man, this is crazy. At first I see your breakdown of the move. Then, as a natural skeptic, I go, does this work? And then I see competition footage of you nailing it and putting people, like, it's unbelievable. Then I see this guy, I forget his name, Miro Hagen. I can't say people's names. He starts nailing the choke in tournaments a couple weeks ago, and then I receive an email from you, and I found that so crazy that I was just watching you on YouTube, and you reached out and you sent an email, and now you're on our show. That's my story. I just want to tell you, I knew about you before you emailed me, and I thought this Wats choke was crazy, and seeing it getting nailed live in competition is really amazing. How did you fall into this choke? We'll start with that, and then we'll go backwards.
Okay. I'd say my memory is probably a little hazy on the exact reasons I fell into the choke, but I have two memories of it. One was I originally trained at Helson Gracie's in Hawaii, and I'd seen a picture up on his wall of this guy doing a choke standing up, and I couldn't tell what was going on, but I asked somebody, and they were guessing what it was, and they tried to show it to me from a knee on the belly position. And I just couldn't do it. My wrists wouldn't turn that way. From knee on the belly, you go north-south, and maybe I was just too early in my training. And but I was really fascinated by the picture on the wall. So I kept playing with it from there. And I thought, there's got to be a way to make this thing work, because it's just nobody even knows what this move is. and I just, instead of from standing, I tried from my knees, and I found I had to twist under, and it just grew from there. And I think what it was, I believe I was a blue belt at the time, and by then, I had moved to a new school, and I tried it on a brown belt, and I ended up putting him to sleep. I was the first person I ever put to sleep, and it scared me. I was like running like, John. At that time I was at John Jock Machado's, and I'm like, John, and I just panicked. And he's just chuckling in the corner. He knew it was no big deal. But that's when something went off. Well, wow, this worked against somebody high level that I knew was better than me. And from then it was a full-time gig of working on that move, basically.
I'm not gonna lie. I was just watching the Wats choke, and it has been applied to me at a tournament before as a blue belt. Yeah, it's not a very fun choke. It's a very deceiving choke, I think. And yeah, my mind is blown right now, as if that just happened to me.
Did it ever been told to you that, like, oh, this should never work, or you're just lucky? Like, did that happen at the start until you just constantly worked on it and made it so efficient?
Yeah, I mean, I think everybody, it kind of happens in jiu-jitsu a lot. I find that when you can do something, people try to do it too. They ask you, how did you do that? And then they can't do it exactly the same. So they dismiss it like it's just you that knows how to do this move. Mm-hmm. And that does happen a lot. And I same thing for me. I see other guys and I'm like, how come I can't, I can watch Marcelo Garcia sweep people all day long and I can't seem to pull it off the same way. But that's just how jiu-jitsu is. As for this, when I started doing the choke, people were asking me how I did it, and I would show them. And even people I'd put out to sleep in the tournament, here and there, they would ask me afterwards. And I'm always open and friendly. I don't have no grudges or any of that stuff. But yeah, a lot of people say, oh, I can get out of this. And I remember we even had a black belt at our school, and I was still either blue belt. I think I was still blue belt. But he said, hey, put me in this choke. I want to see what it feels like. I want to see if I can get out. And he full on let me sink it in. He didn't fight it at all. But once I sunk it in, I'm waiting for him to fight it, and he didn't fight it. And all of a sudden I look up, and he's like out, gurgling for air or whatever. And I was like, wow, it just reinforced that this is something good. People don't realize is coming on. And it's a very sneaky move. I mean, I'm not going to deny that. And most of the tournaments that I fought that I would finish with this move, it was always where they thought they were passing my guard or they thought they were taking my back. And, because you're conditioned, especially in the old days when I first started jiu-jitsu, it was like taking the back is so important or passing the guard is so important that people would completely neglect the fact that there was some tension on their neck and that possibly they're being choked, because logic tells you, hey, if they're not holding me with a leg, then they're not going to be able to choke me. Once I've passed their guard, I'm free. And that's what everybody was kind of told early on. So that just worked for me. I'd say, okay, pass my guard. I don't care. Take my back. I don't care.
That's awesome. So, yeah, I was just watching your choke. It's true though. Everyone does depend on the leg as if you're safe or not for passing. Yeah. Yeah. So, and that is a good rule of thumb. It's just not there are exceptions, that's all. Do you find it crazy that there's a move out there with your name attached to it? Yeah, I do. I think, it's just, it's more, it started as a local thing because people hadn't seen it before. And, there's general names where I've seen baseball choke, I've seen gator roll, I've seen samurai choke. The choke in one form or another has been around, I'm sure, forever, even before the Gracies. But it's just like everything else. People develop it, and everything I developed on that choke, I did myself. But I see other people have developed similar stuff, and they probably just naturally took the same kind of path that I did to discover how it worked for them. And, but for me, since nobody was doing it for a long time, everybody would be like, oh, that's that Wats choke, that's that Wats choke. And I embraced it for a little while. I kind of felt a little uncomfortable about it. But, because some people just go, oh, it's a baseball choke. But a baseball choke can be applied a whole different way. And I have a real
specific way of doing it, and people would come to me to learn. So it just kind of, yeah. I mean, it was nice. It flatters me and stuff, but, you know, I like to be a little more humble than that. I don't, you know, I mean, every move I see, even in jiu-jitsu, you know, early on I thought everything was made up by the Gracies, and then that was kind of a harsh reality to actually see that it comes from judo and, you know, old-time jiu-jitsu, and you're like, wow, they did triangles even back then, you know?
Yeah.
So, you know, who knows when all this stuff might have been done for the first time, but it does feel good. You know, I like that people associate it with me.
You know what? I say there's a time to be humble and there's a time not. We only have a small window to cash out on certain things. This move's getting hot again. I say you reclaim this choke before this kid does and you know, do something about it. Let everyone know your little secrets, the in and outs of the Wats choke. I'm telling you right now, we all that's my dream, to have a move named after me, and I'm humble. But I think that's the coolest thing.
Yeah. Well, you know, I mean, it does feel good, and you know, sometimes people think, oh, you must have learned it somewhere, and you know, I developed it in the school because it worked, just like any move that works. I mean, where I trained John Jock Machado's, there was Eddie Bravo there, and we were different sizes, so we would train in the same classes, but not really together. And I remember seeing him work on his twister, and you know, talking to him one time, he's like, yeah, it's actually a wrestling move that I saw. But it doesn't matter because he took it and he made it his own, and he did all what he does to it and made it an amazing move, you know, and then, you know, it's not really legal so much nowadays, but it's an amazing move. And for this, it's the same thing. I mean, I took it, what I thought was happening, I made it my own, I developed a million ways of doing it and what works for me. And even though I see similarities of people trying stuff now, I've never really seen anybody do it before the time that I used to do it. I mean, I've been doing jiu-jitsu 18 years, so it's just, you know, back then things were much more simpler. It was a basic triangle, a basic armbar. There wasn't all the fancy games that they, you know, have nowadays.
Yeah, but I kind of find that cool. You mentioned yourself working on this, Eddie Bravo working on his own. Meanwhile, you guys are under arguably one of the best ever, John Jock Machado, a living legend. What did he inspire people to be like that, or did he encourage people to work on their own game, especially at blue belt level? Is this something that he encouraged in his students to run free and kind of develop your own game?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know if I would say he encouraged it. He definitely didn't discourage it. You know, he didn't say, no, don't do your thing. You have to do it my way.
Yeah.
Which some instructors would do. Some would go, no, you can't sweep that way. You can't, you know. He was very supportive of people doing their stuff. I mean, you know, when he'd see me pull off the choke in tournaments and stuff, you know, it's always the same. He's happy. He'd laugh. He'd kind of, killer, and, you know, stuff like that. But yeah, I mean, it was a pretty easy environment to work on your own stuff in his school, and everybody kind of had a slightly different game, so it made it nice. But yeah, I mean, you know, at the same token, he would show moves just like everything that, you know, were good that he could do to anybody, sweep anybody, and I couldn't embrace a lot of his moves sometimes, and it was frustrating for me. So when you can't mimic your instructor, you kind of have to start finding your own moves. And that's the beauty of jiu-jitsu, is there's millions of moves, you know, and combinations. So everybody can kind of find their own. And even when I teach now, the same thing. I show everybody moves. I go, look, I don't even do this move, but I know people can do this move. So you should try it and see if it's for you. And now try this, and now try that. And I have a good percentage of my students that can pull off my choke. And, you know, a mass majority of them can't. So I tell them, don't get discouraged, because there's other moves out there you'll be good at. But back to the original question, yeah, I would say he was supportive. He never discouraged it.
Nice.
How much of your energy is spent on trying to make moves that are efficient for you to do, or your students as well?
Efficient and just what? You mean as opposed to the fluff moves that don't work, or?
Opposed to wasting energy just to get that sub or sweep.
Oh. Yeah, I mean, when even with that choke, and when I teach, not just that, but any move, I always have a point that's a bailout point. It's not working. I learned that the hard way. I used to keep my choke, to the bitter end, and then I would lose grips. Maybe I didn't have it right in the beginning when I was still kind of developing it. And then next thing you know, they had my back, and, it was bad news for me. I'd get choked out. But, eventually I found, hey, there's a point where you put so much effort into it and it's going smooth, you're going to get it, keep going. But if not, you need to sit there and bail out at the right time and how to recover into a good position. And I teach that with any jiu-jitsu move. I mean, only go for a triangle or an armbar so long when you're going to burn out. You need to go to plan B and do it before your arms are putty,
Well put. So you're saying 17 years. I'm doing the math. How was the jiu-jitsu scene back then? And can you give us a little quick rundown of the first couple experiences in jiu-jitsu and how you fell in love with this sport or martial art for that point?
Yeah. I've always been a martial art fan. My dad used to take me to Bruce Lee movies when I was young. And just like everybody that was a Bruce Lee fan, I mean, it's a lifelong bug that gets you. And I did karate when I was young for a couple of years. And I was going through a phase where right around the time of the first UFC, where I was trying to find what I wanted to do in martial arts. And I hadn't really done it much from the time I'd been a kid. And, I tried like Kung Fu because I was a Bruce Lee fan, but it just, I don't know. I would look at the teacher and I'd be like, I can take this guy. Because I'm a big guy. I'm like 6'1". So I would buy into it. I would ask a lot of questions like, what am I doing? Am I breaking his leg when I do this? And he'd always be, no, just do the katas. Don't discuss it. And then I tried Aikido because of Steven Seagal movies, and it was nothing like the movies. And same thing. The instructor, I'd be like, I could take this guy. And then the first UFCs happened, and the first one happened, but I hadn't seen it yet. And my friend knew Helson Gracie in Hawaii. I lived in Hawaii at the time. And he's like, you got to come in. This is a great martial art. You won't believe it. They win everybody. They're great. So I went in, and everybody's on the ground. It was at University of Hawaii at the time. They're all on the mats rolling, and I'm like, what's this? I'm not going to fight on the ground. I'm going to stand up and fight. Because I knew nothing of jiu-jitsu like most people at that point. And so I basically walked out. I didn't even try the class. I think right after that's when I actually went to the Kung Fu or the Aikido school or something. And then finally my friend who was persistent, the second UFC was coming up, so he lent me a videotape of, I think the first one or maybe the first and second. And I watched it, and, of course, like anyone who watched Royce Gracie just kill everybody, I flew back to the dojo. I'm like, I got to go. I have to sign up. This is some magical martial art I've never seen before. And like my first class I took, I remember white belts were just beating me up. And that was something I hadn't had at the other martial arts. All the other martial arts, I was thinking I could beat the black belt instructors up if I really wanted to. But in jiu-jitsu, I was afraid of the white belts beating me up. So that just kind of grabbed me, and I don't know, I just absolutely loved it. Things were simpler then. I mean, it's just, you didn't have all the videos and YouTube, didn't have any of that stuff. I mean, there was a couple videos that would be out there, but, you'd learn a triangle, you'd watch it, you'd go home, and you could only think about it. You had no reference to study it. And what you remembered, you maybe try it with your brother or whoever, and then you'd wait till your next class, and you go back, and you'd hopefully see him teach it again. And that's why everybody learned, I think, a lot slower back then. But it was also real magical, and, the special martial art that nobody knew of. None of my friends, my relatives, nobody at that time, But it was a great time. I mean, if I could, I know today there's all these new games out there and all these big stars and stuff, but I love when I got into it because it was a secret nobody knew but me, and I was in a rush to learn it. And there's just, that was a great time.
I was actually going to get around and asking you that. Does this make it harder nowadays as an instructor when there are possibly some blue belts out there that might have known what an early black belt would know, or they're so far advanced now at blue belt? Is this hard for you as an instructor to keep them interested in the sport and Yeah, basically that's what I'm asking.
Yeah, I mean, I know a lot of black belts that I've trained with throughout the years, and a lot of them even complain. They're like, man, blue belts, they have access to everything, and they're better than we were when we were, when we were blue belts for sure. But even now, I mean, blue belts come to my school once in a while to train, and I know there's always a chance they're going to catch me. They're that good nowadays. Um, you know, luckily for me, not only am I a big guy, but I stay active. I train all the time, and that keeps me ahead of the game. But I know if I took a year or two off right now, I would be worried about coming back and rolling with a big, strong blue belt, just because they're amazing nowadays. And I think that's great about jiu-jitsu. I think that really what people have to let go of is, when I first started, it was like a black belt was unbeatable in everybody's mind, and that's how we talked about it. Like, oh, a blue belt would never beat a purple belt will never beat a brown belt, nobody will beat a black belt, and that's pretty much how it was, and it really was that way because, took so long just to learn jiu-jitsu at the time. But nowadays everybody's learning so quick, so I think that people just need to have a different attitude and a different adjustment. And what I know, like, about jiu-jitsu is a big, circle of moves and a whole game. Whether I know all the game out there or not, probably not. I mean, there's always new moves created every day. But I can teach somebody, and even if they're really good, even if they pick 5 moves and can beat everybody with those 5 moves, they still don't know jiu-jitsu. They don't know the whole scope of what they need to know. So whether or not they can come in and beat one of my blue belts or my purple belts, doesn't really matter, because I can offer them, this magical martial art that can help them become a better fighter. So people just have to let go of the ego. Purple belts have to know, hey, I'm in my 30s or 40s, and this young wrestling kid comes in, he may beat me, and that's just how it's going to be. But it wasn't that way at one time, but it is now. But at the same time, when I tell people about jiu-jitsu, I just say it's a lifelong thing. It doesn't matter. You're not going to come in and learn jiu-jitsu and leave and you're done. I try to get them so that they want to do it forever, as opposed to going to the gym and lifting weights or, it's a way of life, as you guys, I'm sure, know.
Does having that in mind push you forward as a coach as well as an athlete?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. It's kind of, I guess, a tricky question. Coach and an athlete, I guess. Competing-wise, I love rolling in my school. I've always had nerves for competing. That's kind of stopped me for actually doing tournaments. I do them once in a while, just to keep up. But I love rolling every day, and I love staying in shape with jiu-jitsu because I've never been a gym rat. I've never really liked doing other stuff, and people still are amazed that, is that all you do is jiu-jitsu? And pretty much, yes, that's all I do. I mean, once in a while I'll do a couple other physical fitness boot camp type of things, but not really, not like jiu-jitsu. As a coach, that's a tricky thing. I mean, I fight a lot of people that I've come up with that are also black belts around me who are really old school. They only want the toughest people in their school, and they only, they don't want you to water down how you teach jiu-jitsu. They don't want it to be too easy, and I don't 100% agree with that. I think, I like the whole theory that jiu-jitsu should be for everybody, and I push those who want to go to tournaments, and I'll, coach them, and I love that. And then those who don't want, I don't pressure them at all because I don't want to scare them away from jiu-jitsu if they love it. And, I don't know, it's become so much more complicated nowadays for jiu-jitsu than the old days, but there's so many people interested in it now that you have to offer everything. And, so for me, I do what I want to do for me. I like staying active. I try to run a school that, appeals to everybody and not just the super athletic elite fighters. And, I compete when I get the bug to want to compete. And if I don't, I'm comfortable just coaching and teaching. Teaching's to me better than everything I've ever done in jiu-jitsu. I love it because nothing's better than showing somebody something and then watching them a week later doing it to someone else in class, and they're just so proud of themselves because they pulled off this move you showed them. And that's just the most rewarding thing for me of jiu-jitsu so far.
Nice. Being around John Jock Machado, and you previously mentioned Helson Gracie. What are some things that these people instilled in yourself that you now pass on to your students?
Well, I was with Helson since I was a blue belt. With him, it was just the whole. I mean, that was the early days for me, and he did a lot of stuff that I used to like. He actually taught when I was in the class. I guess I've heard he doesn't really personally teach so much anymore, but it was good. It was just I liked he'd ask people around, hey, what are you having problems with, and anybody have and back then we had Barrett Yoshida he was an old time blue belt there at that point. But everybody's hand would go up, and how do you stop Barrett's triangle, and he'd chuckle, and it's like, I can't teach you how to stop this triangle. But any other questions, let's go. But I really liked how we'd sit around and talk, and I try to take some of that once in a while with what I do. But like I said, that was only to my blue belt. The rest of my jiu-jitsu pretty much, 99% was with John Jock after that. And with John Jock, what I liked about him and his whole thing was he's a good person, seems like a good person. He puts it out there that he's a good person. And, I'm sure you're familiar, but, he's got like one hand with only a thumb, basically, and a little part of a finger, and it was a deformity he was born with. But yet, he's amazing, it's just the fact that he could overcome that and be such an amazing grappler, so inspirational, that's kind of why I chose his school. At first, I'd never really heard of him. He hadn't really done the Abu Dhabi, and when I went to his school. So I was actually worried about that, thinking, how is he going to teach me jiu-jitsu when only one of his hands works? That's my thought. Mm-hmm. But back then, 40-minute drive just to train somewhere, and that was where his school was. I didn't have a whole lot of options. So I went there, and, I got real lucky because he became, pretty much famous after that. But he was always friendly, always nice. He was never like never attitude, never mean, never some coaches are like that, go get that guy, you got to beat him, you got to this, you got to that, John Jock was never like that. It was always just like he'd coach a little on the side, whether I won or lost, he made me feel good. And the environment, even in the school, was like that. My kids took his kids' class, and I really liked being in an environment that felt positive and not hostile or not aggressive, like you have to compete and you have to do well. Which, I'm only assuming other schools are like that. I didn't really train in a lot of other schools, but I have seen it in the tournament environment. And, I wanted that. If you're going to be somewhere for 10 years, I want to make sure it feels like family. And that's just pretty much my theory. And that's what I try to do at my school. I tell everybody, I don't care how good you get at jiu-jitsu, become the best you can be, but keep in mind, before you go hop in a bunch of schools, that, this is also a family for you. And, you want to become friends and rely on the guys you're training with, because you're going to be with them for at least 10 years if you go all the way to black belt.
I agree. If anyone else knows, they asked me, I had the opportunity to do a John Jock Machado seminar before, and it was actually one of my favorite seminars I've ever participated. He really simplifies every move. So it must have been amazing getting firsthand knowledge. I want to get your take on it, since you had the pleasure of training with him for a long time. I was watching an Eddie Bravo interview, and he said because of the way his hand was, he really developed the overhook game like no one else has ever done. Did you see that, or did you experience, and do you believe that because of the lack of the fingers being able to grip, that the overhook game was developed in BJJ a lot more serious, especially no-gi?
Yeah. No, I 100% agree with that. I think that, I would say beyond that, even the fact that the reason why he walked right into Abu Dhabi with a no-gi environment when no BJJ fighters were really doing hardcore training in that environment. It was more like wrestlers and stuff. There were some jiu-jitsu fighters that were doing that, but, I had never really trained no-gi at all myself until I went to his school. But, obviously he adapted right over because he didn't rely on his grip, since he didn't have the one hand to grip. And so it was the over-under. It was his whole game didn't rely on whether he could grab your gi. So when the gi came off, it didn't change anything for him pretty much, you know. I mean, he still has great chokes and stuff with his other hand, and he's got the one thumb, but man, he's stronger than my entire hand, I'm pretty sure. But yeah, it really helped out. And, you know, I don't know if he exactly would teach us because of it that way. I don't know if it reflected in his teaching, because we still learned jiu-jitsu moves that were traditional jiu-jitsu moves, and you know, whatever his take on them was. But yeah, you can feel it. And, you know, when I would grapple with him, it's just his over-under was just amazing. His hooks, you immediately fly, and I outweigh him by a lot. And, you know, it would just be, you know, you'd look at him, you think, there's no way this guy can do what he does. But, you know, you roll with him, and next thing you know, you're like airborne. He just has a way of just doing it. No matter what level you get to, he's just always better. And, you know, that's just how some athletes are. And, you know, I kind of always compare him to like a Michael Jordan. There's just somebody who comes into the sport and they have it. And you can't teach that, but, you know, you can teach everybody jiu-jitsu, but there's only going to be a select few that just have what it takes to be amazing, and he's one of them, you know. And whether his hand played a role, but I'm sure he would have been amazing if he had both his hands the same, you know.
Yeah. With that being said, like, he had a seamless game for gi, no gi. Me personally, I have two different games. My gi game and no gi game are night and day, not even similar. I got a whole different set of moves. Yourself, you know, you got your Wats choke. How's your no gi game, and is it totally different, or everything else is similar for you?
No, it's totally different as well. I have it's the same kind of logic, but, you know, I think for me, like, I had a wrestler student for a little while that trained at another school and came into my school, but he was convinced that if we went no-gi, that you know, he would do real well with me or better. And when we rolled afterwards, you know, he was just like, wow, your no-gi game is so different. And he figured I would just not have anything, since what I normally do is, and my baseball choke, you know, I don't really do that as much anymore as I used to. I mean, I teach it, I do it once in a while, but I'm just like everybody else. I have a bunch of moves, and I like to do a lot of my other moves. But with no-gi, I primarily footlocks. You know, straight footlocks is actually my favorite. But I can't remember exact time, but right around the time there was a guy named Oleg Taktarov. He won like UFC 8 or something in Russian Sambo.
Also the dirtiest fighter in MMA history.
he could have been. I don't know if he was. I've heard of some other guys like gouging eyes and stuff. But he was doing a seminar, and I went, and I took to his footlocks right off the bat, and I went to another one, and then he kind of took me under his wing for like a few months, just because I was doing so well. He'd want me to show up at his seminars. And it was going great until one day I didn't tap, and he ended up breaking my leg, like the small bone. And I just didn't tap because somebody had said, oh, it's only pain, you know, if you know, you don't have to tap if you can stand the pain. So I tried to stand the pain, and the next thing you know, we hear my little bone in my leg break. But so that kind of put a stop to it, and then I ended up moving to Hawaii to train with Helson for the second time. But with him, I learned straight footlocks, and they got me through a lot of stuff. I won a lot of tournaments and stuff with those. You know, this was at a day there wasn't so much video, so I have a lot of videos of my fights, but it's just a percentage of the videos, because not everybody had iPhones and all that stuff back then. But yeah, straight footlocks, guillotines, arm triangle, head arm triangle. So those are pretty much my no-gi game. And when they put a gi on, it just becomes, you know, I only keep the arm triangle, and I kind of go for some other stuff that I like. I always pull out footlocks, but I don't like to do it too much, because I don't teach my white belts too many variations on footlocks, just for safety. So I kind of stay away from training it as well.
Nice. We're gonna have to wrap this show up. It's getting a little late for us. Usually we finish a lot earlier. Thank you, by the way, for actually coming on tonight. I know we shifted it back a half hour, so we really appreciate you coming on. I just want you to, anything you want to plug, your gym, how they could get in touch with you, if you have anything going on you want to let the people know, now's your time.
Yeah. Well, first of all, yeah, thank you very much for having me. This was great. I really enjoyed it. And for contacting me, I have a school in Simi Valley, California, and it's Wats Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu or Wats MMA. And other than that, I have watsmma.com website, but I've been kind of just playing with putting videos on YouTube. And so if anybody wants to subscribe, I just put them on for the love of jiu-jitsu. I don't really have any motives right now other than just spreading the word. And, wouldn't mind having some more followers for that. It just gives me feedback, and it keeps me active if I'm always trying to come up with moves. Kind of exciting. But that's it.
Nice. And I like to end the show maybe with a nice story. If you have any recollections of something John Jock might have said to you that helped you during this tough journey, because we all know BJJ is rough some days. It's a hate-love relationship.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, it's definitely been a lot of ups and downs with everybody in martial arts. It's not an easy thing. But, I loved being at his school. It was a great environment, and, this will be more of a humorous story, I suppose. But, I'd heard the previous caller, you asked maybe their highlights or whatever. And for me, it's still going to be when the day you get your black belt, because 10 years, you get that thing, I was about to break down crying, and I can't cry in front of jiu-jitsu people. Yeah. But it was just, emotions took over, and that was a pretty amazing day. And then, and then just the times that my choke worked out. But as for John Jock, my humor story I like to tell people is that, he's this world-famous grappler. And even the no-gi game, we didn't train no-gi at our school hardly ever when I was there. But he would go win these big tournaments. So when we first did the no-gi tournaments that he held, you could grab people's shirts and their shorts. I choked the guy unconscious with his T-shirt. And it was just, it was funny because now I look back and I'm embarrassed to tell people that because that's so against the rules. But that was part of the rules at the part. There was no real rules at the time. But when he would coach me, because a lot of times these were his tournaments, it would, he would just not say much, basically. And people would go, wow, you're so lucky to have John Jock in your corner. Man, he must just be like, you must be, have the greatest guy telling you what to do and this and that. And I'd always say, you know what? All I ever would hear and remember when him would coaching me would be, let's go, Dion. Come on. Let's go, Dion. And I'd hear the other coaches to be, grab his arm, grab his leg. He has nothing. He doesn't have a choke. Move, run, this, that. And John Jock, let's go, Dion. Come on. And that was his coaching to me, like 90% of the time. And it's just, to me, it was always so funny because everyone thought I'm getting this magical advice from him. And I think that's what I kind of liked, is that he didn't get caught up in the whole telling me how to do the fight. It helped me sometimes because I didn't have to worry that I was letting him down and not following his direction. He knew I knew what to do, and, it just felt good that he was in my corner when he was around for that. So, I don't know, that's just my little story on him.
I like it, man. That's a good point. Sometimes we just like to know that they're around more than tell us how to do it.
Yeah.
All right, man, let's wrap it up with that. Thank you very much. I'm sure we'll keep in contact, and I'm always watching your YouTube videos, so I'm excited for the next one you put out, and have a good night.
All right. Thank you, guys. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay, good night.
Man.
The Wats troop.
Yeah, man. It's crazy. We just before we wrap this up, Jared showed me his right after he realized what it was. He tells me, like, he's been caught in this, and he shows me, and Lord knows, Jared actually gets fucking 4 points for taking his back. Well, still the choke is sunk in. He's almost going out, and he gets the point. The ref didn't see that he was being choked out, but he had his hooks in, gets the point, and he got out of the choke, thank God. But it's exactly what he says, man.
Yeah.
The guard starts opening up, and you friggin' pass, cut through like a warm knife through butter, and you're getting choked. You mount him, he's still choking. He rolls on his stomach, and you took his back, and he's still choking you. It's phenomenal.
And I'll tell you this right now.
Look up the Wats choke, everyone, just so you know.
When I was in it, he opened his guard, and it was ridiculous. Yeah. I was like, this guy doesn't know how to grapple.
Yeah, because he was playing a great knee shield game.
And this was in the tournament.
Yeah.
Okay. And I was like, oh, cool, easy passing. And then he starts turning on his stomach, and it got tight. I was like, what the hell, dude? And then, All I could say is it was a scary moment.
Yeah.
But
because theoretically, you're thinking, I got his back, I cannot tap, but you're going to sleep.
Yeah. And I remember looking at my coach in the building.
Yeah.
And it was like, get those grips off.
Yeah.
And man, I was like almost passing out, but
yeah.
I have a pretty good back game, so I just I pried those grips off. And,
yeah.
Oh man, I think it's an underplaying game.
Yeah.
But it's deceiving. I'll tell you that.
Yeah, and Wats show. Just type it in. You'll see it. You'll see his version. You'll see that kid that's been hitting it lately. And Clark Gracie goes to sleep in that fight, and Zach Maxwell taps from being on full mount on him, basically.
Yes.
So check that out. It's phenomenal. It's quite unique. On Facebook today, BJJ Addict, I asked people how important grip fighting is, and that story just really sparks how vital this is to break those grips on the stand-up part and on the ground. Grip fighting, go give us your opinion on grip fighting also.
Yes. And I'm going to start making T-shirts saying I survived the Wats choke. If you guys...
that is awesome.
If you guys hit me up, I'll send you some T-shirts.
Yeah, all right. I survived the Wats choke. All right, guys, that's it for this week. Tune in next week. We got another great episode. We got Bruno Tostas on and Ian McFain. I can't say his name. I apologize once again. But Ian, he's quite the competitor right now, young kid, and he's smashing out in ATL. And, of course, Bruno Tostas has been around a long time, Renzo Gracie black belt. I believe he's the jiu-jitsu coach for Matt Hamill, UFC fighter. So, it would be cool to see his take on how do you teach a guy with such high-level wrestling the ground game, right? When they already think or they do actually know stuff on the ground, they're dominant. How do you teach someone like that jiu-jitsu? So next week, hopefully they remember and they're in. So let's hit those drum. Hang tight. Shame on you for not sending us those picks.
Wuss.
Woos.
Awesome.